Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stay with us as the Suns get set to shine.
Here's Perry to Gar Hurd. Here's the jump shot.
Comes to Marley, a long three. He got it! He got it! Into Booker. Here's the three. Suzanne! Oliver, Sir Charles, and he flies in for a wham, bam, slam. Whammo time! He got it! Suzanne! Oh, brother!
Welcome to the 7 Seconds or Less podcast. Normally we talk about the NBA and the Suns, but tonight, David, it's all about the Phoenix Suns. They played their first regular season game of the 2018-2019 season, and it was a pretty good one.
It was fun, Max. You're up early, I'm up late. We both got the motivation to talk about this one some more and have a chat with the listeners here.
It was going to be really hard to wake up for this if they got blown out again. But they did not. In fact, the final score kind of shows they blew out the Dallas Mavericks.
121-100, Max. I can't think of the last time we had a fun opening game or any game like that.
No, it feels like it's been forever. Just to have a game that was competitive at the end that we actually cared about. But we're going to react to this game sort of by, if you read Zach Lowe, he does the 5 things he likes, 5 things he doesn't like. We're going to do something similar to that. It's going to be probably mostly focused on the likes because the game was so fun. But we'll do a little bit of the things we're worried about going forward. But it's a positive time. We're happy, aren't we, David?
We are. One thing that I didn't like was not being at the game, Max, because it looked like a super fun one. What was the atmosphere like? You were lucky enough to be there. It looked like a sold-out crowd and some MVP chants very early on for Devin Booker. Everyone was fired up.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. You could feel the energy when Ayton was announced. I mean, the stadium exploded when Booker was announced. Same thing. It was great. It was different from any game last year. And I think this kind of leads into the first one. Let's talk about my number one thing I like, and that's our superstar, David. That's Devin Booker.
He was everything that you would hope for. Coming back from a hand injury of all things, I think everyone had kind of tempered their expectations a little bit, but he got hot as he likes to do, Max, and he kind of carried us through definitely that fourth quarter when we had some rough patches where no one could get a bucket. He stepped up.
Yeah, he was rusty early, I think, with the shot. He still looked good out there. I mean, he's just really good at basketball. And the offense is totally different when he's on the floor just because the defense has to respect him so much. But, so he started out rusty, and then, the fourth quarter, I think, what was it? I think it was a 4-point game, like 96-92. And it kind of looked like the Suns were in a little bit of danger. But then all of a sudden, I mean, Devin Booker, like you said, just got nuclear hot, as he's wont to do. Started making every single three, getting to the rim a little bit. He took over the game. And my favorite part of the entire game, and this ties into the atmosphere point, after he got fouled on the three, after, kind of the end of the scoring bench, and he just was super fired up. He starts running around the court, just like getting the crowd up, That's when the crowd really got loud for the MVP chants. And you could tell he was just so hyped because, his first 3 years in the league were awful. So he gets to the free throw line. He's so jacked up over this. He's just like overpumped and just breaks the free throw. It was kind of a funny moment.
Yeah, he definitely didn't look his true form self on the free throw line for that one. But I was looking through kind of his first 3 seasons after tonight's game, and 6 triples he's done many a time, Max, but he hasn't got to this 7 yet, which we can celebrate maybe one day when he does, as the 7 Seconds or Less podcast here. But he's done 6 a few times and hasn't cracked over that mark just yet. But just the 19 shots for his 35 points tonight, which was a very efficient Devin Booker, which is something we touched on in the preseason. I expected and was harping on, particularly with the point guard conversation, that Igor was going to get him in the right spots.
Yeah, and I have no doubt you'll get to Igor more in full in a little bit, but you could definitely tell, until the end when he took over, Booker was much more in the flow of the game on offense, don't you think? He wasn't forcing things, because he didn't have to force things as much. It was the shots kind of were just coming to him.
Yeah, you can't ask me to list things that I like and not expect me to come up with an Igor section here, Max. So I'll save some more Booker stuff for later. Did you have anything else on Booker, watching him in person, that stood out to you?
Just really his command towards the end. Like every single time in the end, when they didn't have Cannon out there, right? They pulled him in. It was just him and Josh, and he would just get across that half court line like right before the second violation every time. He just looked so confident. The way he just stared at Wesley Matthews just wasn't concerned. It really does look like he's taken a leap in terms of his confidence level and his feeling out there as a star.
And he's got weapons now, Max. What we're seeing is kind of what we as Suns fans have seen, flashes of in the last couple of years when he's taken over games, and maybe the greater NBA community will see it a little bit more because maybe the Suns will have more competitive games where what he does down the stretch matters more and is taken a little bit more notice of. But as you said, they pulled Kanan, and then he had Josh with him, who had a pretty good game himself, and the big fella in the middle just was drawing kind of 3 or 4 guys on every role, as we've discussed, all off-season is one of his biggest strengths already in the NBA. And then, Ariza and Anderson and, the threats from deep around the court. So he did it all, and it was largely due to, the system and the guys that they've been able to build around him, Max.
Yep, could not agree more. Let's go ahead and move on to your first thing that you like.
I'm going to have to go with DeAndre Ayton here. Didn't have an amazing game compared to some of his preseason games in terms of, boards and overall points. But, he still ends up with 18 and 10, Max, and somehow ends up with 6 assists. I shouldn't even say somehow. He had a pretty impressive passing game. And, I remember something that I predicted early in the offseason was that he wouldn't average, 1 assist a game, just because I thought his role was going to be very much as a roller, and using his gravity to that effect for a hockey assist, so to speak. But they're running so much through him at the moment, maybe due to the point guard situation, I'm not too sure, and he's delivering, Max.
Yeah, he especially to come out at the start of the game, he was a monster. I think he had like the first 5 points or something like that. He was really good at the start of the game. I thought there were times where he looked a little bit tired out there, especially I'm thinking of when Luka kind of just sailed by him in transition. He didn't really even challenge the shot. But
yeah,
overall,
that was a bad one.
That was not great. But overall, I agree with you. I think he looked really comfortable in offense. There were a lot of stretches where he didn't look like a rookie at all. Defensively, I thought it was a little more of an adventure. Towards the end of the game, he started to really get engaged and sort of was a little bit dominant on that end for a while, in the closing minutes. But offensively, agree. I just think he was a nice little piece to have. Igor was using him effectively. I think there's a lot of room to grow, which is exciting because, like you said, 18, 10, and 6, not a bad place to grow from. But, yeah, I was very happy with his debut. I thought he was very good.
Yeah, a double-double debut, and a little did you know here for you, Max. It popped up on the TV when I was watching, so I can't take credit for this one myself, but Alvin Adams and Sean Marion are the only other 2 Suns to have a double-double on debut, which just shows how much we were crying out for a big man as Suns fans. It's not something that we're terribly used to, but you touched on the defense there. Something I'm going to be watching all year with him is, we kind of look to assist to turnover ratio with, young up and coming point guards. I'm going to kind of watch this fouls to block ratio with Ayton. He had only the 2 fouls, but he was very timid on defense. Just the 1 credited block. Maybe could have picked up a couple more deflections and things like that. And but yeah, got lost on defense a little bit, which we may touch on a little bit later. As a team, they were pretty poor defensively and maybe got a little lucky. But just what they're running through him is what impresses me so much, Max. And maybe with some better chemistry on the court, getting used with Booker, finishing games and things. They may even use the big fella even more. I think I only counted really 1 pick and roll bucket. I'm not sure if you remember any others off the top of your head, but I can remember kind of Kanan with a wraparound pass that he initially dropped and then picked up and got the dunk on that one. But there wasn't too much more run for him out of the pick and roll with any kind of easy lobs or anything. Dallas played that pretty smartly, I thought.
Yeah, I agree with you. The pick and roll was sort of ineffective most of the game for the Suns. They were having a hard time getting. So yeah, they would get after the pick was set and rolled. There was just really no lane to pass to him at all. I remember there was one I can't remember when this was. It was third or fourth quarter when I think it may have been Booker and Ayton, and they tried to do the lob, and it just wasn't there most of the time. That, like you said, I agree with you. Dallas just did a great job of defending it. They were able to stay in front of Ayton, and they still were able to bother the point guard. So, yeah, that wasn't the way the Suns were scoring tonight. Anything else in Ayton?
No, as we said, pretty efficient game. Great debut, but lots of room to grow, which is probably why it's on my like list, Max, because you can see the growth there with the big fella, and pretty impressive debut from the number one pick.
Yeah, it's nice to start from there. My next thing is going to be whoever it was wearing number 12 in the cornrows, and I guess it's TJ Warren's jersey. Who the hell is that guy, David?
Is that the guy that we cut Devon Reed for?
I mean, if it is, then that makes a lot of sense. Man, so TJ, the 3-point shooting looks. I don't want to overreact to one game, David. 3-4 game, whatever. But it wasn't just the fact that he made shots. They looked really good.
They did look good, and you and I have discussed this quite a bit. I think he's still going to be streaky. He's going to have games like tonight's one, and games where he goes cold. The key thing is that he keeps shooting it, Max. Mm-hmm. That's the encouraging thing for me. Like he's taken 4 tonight, hit 3 of them. Igor, I'm sure, has gotten into him that he just can't play him if he's not going to take those open shots. So, there was even a couple that he passed up in the corners that he probably could have taken as well, which you'd think when he was running that hot he might, let it fly. But, that's the important thing, and I think that's what has really gotten to him in these last kind of couple of weeks with Igor, is that he wants him to play. He's going to run a lot of stuff for him. They ran a lot of plays for him in that second unit to get him kind of going downhill towards the bucket. But, I think Igor's clearly had a conversation with him around, he needs to shoot, and, maybe that confidence and kind of repetitive nature of it is going to mean that he's at least a capable shooter from 3. I don't think anyone expects him to be, like the dead eye that he was tonight. But, and that's going to open up the rest of his game, which I think is probably why he's on your like list as well, around some of the other things that he did, Max.
Yeah, he passed the ball a couple of times, which is a couple of times more than any point last season. He actually also made a defensive play, a big one, a steal and a fast break opportunity out of it. So I really liked the way he was playing. He was more engaged than normal. He looked like TJ's always been sort of a guy who's like just kind of like a point getter and isn't really playing basketball with the rest of his team. He's just like getting points on his own. Tonight I felt he was much more a part of what the Suns were doing. I think he's really bought into Igor's offensive and defensive system.
Yeah, I think it's a good one to bring up. I think when we were really struggling through stretches there, he got to the line a couple of times, which is kind of why you want TJ in that second unit. You just want that get-out guy every now and then, run a play for him. He actually missed quite a lot of shots, kind of looking at he's 5-12 from the field, 3 from 4 from 3. So, essentially he was kind of an unusual 2 from 8 from the field outside of the hot streak from 3. But, I can remember a couple of times where we just needed a bucket and he got fouled and kind of finished 4 from 4 from the line. So, that's what you want from TJ in that role. 23 minutes, 17 points. It's kind of perfect for him, and he looks like he's bought in.
Yep. I hope it's not just a blip. Let's hope it's a continuing trend. That's kind of who TJ is now. All right, you got your next thing?
Yeah, I'll go off to one of the other wings. Really impressive game from Trevor Ariza, I thought, Max. Exactly why you sign a guy like that in the offseason. There was a lot of questions from Suns fans and general NBA fans around why the Suns would essentially spend their whole cap space on a guy like Trevor Ariza. And not to overreact to one game, but what we saw tonight from Trevor Ariza is exactly why you bring a guy like that in on a 1-year deal, don't you think?
Yeah, he was the best player on the team for the first 3 quarters, I think, pretty easily.
He was a team high 25 too, Max.
That doesn't surprise me. He couldn't miss. There were stretches when he left. I actually was nervous because it seemed to kind of fall apart a little bit on both ends to an extent when he didn't play, because he seems to be the one who's the most comfortable with what's going on in Igor's system, which makes sense. He's a veteran who's played in a lot of good teams. I think he's picked it up probably faster than everybody else has. And yeah, I have not enough good things to say about him. He was awesome. If he keeps playing like this, it's going to be an incredible signing because he's going to be the second best player on our team. So, yeah, I mean, what else can you say? He was awesome.
He had 21, 8, and 7 assists. And, going through the box score, you can kind of see assists through, everyone, even guys like Anderson picked up 3, and, Kanan had 7, and Josh Jackson had 3, which, we'll get into with maybe talking about Igor. But funnily enough, Max, did you know I was on his Basketball Reference page earlier, just trying to have a look at what his career high in assists might be, and I noticed that the nickname that they had listed for him was Switchblade, which I've never heard in my life before, but I think it's probably more like Swiss Army knife for us, Max, because he was kind of doing a little bit of everything out there, as you said, and that's kind of going to be his role this year. And probably one play that stood out for me was that Euro step he threw around DeAndre Jordan at the start of the first.
Oh yeah.
The end of the first quarter, I should say. I saw more playmaking out of Trevor Ariza, whether it was for himself or for others tonight, than maybe I saw the last kind of 3 seasons on the Rockets.
Yeah, the Suns are actually letting him dribble, which helps your playmaking. But yeah, that's crazy. I didn't realize he had 7 assists. That's funny because I didn't realize, usually you can kind of tell when guys are racking up assist numbers. It's almost kind of hard to tell in Igor's offense because the ball just moving around so much. You kind of forget who the last guy to have the ball was.
Yeah, and I think Ariza was just in those lucky situations a lot of the time where he was that kind of last pass. The defense closed out on him, particularly because he was so hot, and he was the one laying it off to an open man for the better shot. Which is exactly what you want out of that veteran, not being selfish, moving the ball around. And he was 5 from 9 from deep tonight as well, Max. So pretty much the perfect first game from Ariza, and he was a little risky on defense. If I was going to pick one part of his game up, I think he really tried to take it up to Luka, particularly early on, and he was really putting the pressure on him and kind of overplayed a couple of times. And Luka showed his veteran rookie mindset a couple of times and was crafty enough to use it against him. But that's being very nitpicky for Trevor Ariza's game because, as I said, a plus 25 team high, and not too many more nice things that I can say about him, Max.
Brief aside, and we'll focus on the Suns after this. What did you think of Luka? I thought it was kind of a weird game from him. Got into foul trouble pretty early. He clearly couldn't shoot. But he did kind of bring that. He looked like a veteran out there already, I thought. He was very crafty. There were times when I thought he was the best player on the floor for Dallas. But, yeah, not the best overall game from him, but what'd you think?
Yeah, he picked up 3 assists in a matter of minutes and was kind of in control of the game for the Mavs. And then the Suns got him in foul trouble. I do wonder how much that was Igor kind of pre-planning and the scouting report, and whether that's a theme that we see throughout Luka's rookie season on the Mavs. The Mavs were missing a couple of guys in Harrison Barnes and Dirk as well, so they had a few weak links on the court that probably won't be playing regular minutes if everyone's healthy. But the Suns got him in foul trouble and he never really got in a rhythm after that. And then towards the end of the game, he just looked tired. You said before that Ayton looked tired, and I think that's going to happen with all these rookies that are playing 30 plus minutes from the outset with these bad teams. But he looked really bad towards the end. And I think one of my notes late in the game was, how many minutes has he played? Because he was in foul trouble for the whole first half. So he didn't actually play probably as many as he was supposed to in the first half. So I was very surprised that he had dead legs towards the end there.
Yeah, his condition looks pretty bad. That's going to be a problem going forward. They're going to have to fix that. But let's turn back to the Phoenix Suns. I'll do kind of the last thing I like, and you can throw out one too.
Go for it.
So I actually thought Isaiah Kanan, or as they were saying in the stadium, the announcer Cannon. I don't think he's gotten the memo yet, but he actually thought he was fine. He hit a couple shots, which is good to see. You're going to need that out of the point guard next to Booker. I thought you mentioned the wraparound pass to Ayton. He was the only one who was able to get a pass and pick and roll to Ayton. Yep. I thought he was okay. I don't think he was amazing by any means, but I was comfortable with him out there. It didn't really work when he wasn't with the Stars, but when he's with Booker and Ayton, I think it works okay.
Here's something for you, Max, and I was surprised when I saw. If I told you he was 3 of 10 tonight, would that surprise you?
It would, yeah. First of all, I didn't think he even shot that much, but yeah, I guess there were a couple of those little bailout shots towards the end of clocks and stuff that he kind of was forced to take. So I'm not going to blame that totally on him, but he did make 2 threes out of those 3, right?
Yeah, and another one that kind of rolled over the front of the rim that was a really key bucket at an important time when we were kind of struggling. So, that basically means he missed every other shot he took, which there must have been a few drives and things that we kind of missed because, I was very surprised when I saw that. He had 8, 6, and 7, which again ties into what we were discussing with Igor. These guys are going to have these surprising stat lines that, you just don't see with eye watching the game. But, I think you're right. He was solid. And it was probably the right move to start him in retrospect. I still don't know going forward. I had in my notes, the Mavs are a great team for him to start because, they're flooded with undersized point guards. So they could kind of get away with it. But it's going to be interesting to see how Igor adjusts when, we've got Kanan and Booker in the backcourt. And they're playing some big guards because, we could be in trouble and pretty early. And maybe that's where we see Igor either get funky with starting lineups or early rotations, Max.
Yeah, well, assuming he gets back to health, Russell Westbrook's going to be playing against us 3 times in the next month, so they're going to have to figure something out with that guy.
Yeah, that's tough. That's going to be very tough, and maybe that's a good segue to move into Igor, and then we'll talk about maybe some things that we didn't like with the defense and things, but from Igor's perspective, first game as head coach, can't go much better than that, I wouldn't have thought. And the Suns had 35 assists and only 12 turnovers, which is not something we're used to seeing as Phoenix fans, Max. So that's a pretty encouraging sign from the first game, and 34 threes is the final attempts that we took as well. So what did you think watching Igor's offense first time kind of in the flesh in a real game?
I think it was very strange to watch the Suns play a real NBA offense in person. I haven't seen that in a very long time. Just the actions, people moving around, the ball moving. It was a breath of fresh air. It really was. And like you mentioned, the assist totals tell the whole story. With Ariza 7, Kanan 7, Booker 7, 8 and 6. Like that's what the Golden State Warriors do. I'm not saying this team's Golden State Warriors because obviously they're not, but the sharing the ball, the assist totals across the team, I think that's going to be the metric for this team going forward. They're actually, if they're playing well and they're executing Igor's system, is going to be when we have these like crazy balanced assist totals. That's what you want to see out of this. It's just great.
We averaged 21.3 assists last season and only hit 35 once in the 82nd game of the year, which was versus Dallas, ironically. And then with the threes, only 11 times out of 82 last season did we attempt 34 threes, and we actually averaged just a tick under 28. So 2 pretty key changes. I know it's only one game, but from the way that this team is going to play, they're probably never going to be as hot as what they were tonight, but they're going to keep taking and hopefully making their fair share of threes and sharing the ball around.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it grow too, because that they're brand new at this. So the fact that it's already this good is really encouraging. Then we'll see. Maybe when we're halfway through the season, it'll become even more second nature to these guys, and they'll just be flying around.
Yeah, let's touch on Booker really quickly, like we did at the top, but with an Igor slant. So, you mentioned particularly early, I thought in the first half, kind of all Booker's buckets were in great spots, not really taking jump shots off isolation possessions or anything like that. They really had him going forward. I thought there was a great quote from Igor in terms of justifying why he was starting Kanan, and that was because he didn't want Booker looking side to side as a point guard early on in the game. He wanted him, when he was receiving the ball, always to be driving forward and looking to score. So, that's kind of what we saw in the first half, Max. And one reason I'm very confident that Booker's going to really have an uptick in his kind of field goal percentage this season, because the spots in one game that he got Booker in, take the fourth quarter, microwave shots out of it, and Booker was getting a lot of layups. He was getting a lot of action around Ayton at the elbow, and there was a couple of drives there where he's basically no one between him and the bucket, and he's just getting easy layups, Max.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to be more efficient this year. I think that's almost certain to happen. And yeah, even though I agree with you that a lot of those were wide open to the rim, some of them weren't, and I was pretty impressed with his finishing, actually. I thought he looked a little bit better doing that.
Yeah, that lefty one around Wes Matthews where he basically sat him down on the court was just like that.
He loves playing against Wes Matthews.
They got into it a little bit, and he certainly brings out the best in him, and that was probably the highlight of the game for mine.
That's awesome. So, before we get to things we don't like, I want to talk about the thing that I have no freaking idea if I like, and that's the that's the roller coaster that is Josh Jackson. The play that epitomized him, I thought in the whole game, was when he turned the ball over in the backcourt to Dennis Smith Jr. and then chased him down and had this insane chase down block on him. It's just one horrible play followed by one great play followed by another great play, then another horrible play. I don't know what to make of him, David.
That's just him in a nutshell. And then I think even after that, they obviously got the bucket because no one else helped him out after getting that block. And then he took the ball in again, and then Dennis Smith stole the ball from him again, but it kind of went to a loose ball foul situation after that, and then they kind of got into it a little bit. So not a great start as Josh Jackson as a kind of lead ball handler bringing the ball up the court. So not sure what to think of there, but I've got a new rule for Josh Jackson. You ready to hear it?
Yes, I am.
He is only allowed to shoot off the glass.
Yeah, for some reason those were going in.
He hit everything off the glass and basically missed everything else, Max. And he was 7-11 from the field, took some, tough shots. Again, he was 3 for 4 from 3 like TJ was. So you take those out and then all of a sudden it's getting a little bit dicey. And that's my little bit of caution here. I agree with you. It's kind of hard to, where to place him, whether it's things we like or didn't like. But, if there's a night, maybe next game against Denver where Warren and Jackson aren't hitting those threes, then, the offense certainly wouldn't have looked as good as what it did tonight.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot harder for them to score if that's the case. But, yeah, just to tie it up on Jackson, like another just contrast thing is he hit 2 of the biggest shots of the game, those threes down the stretch to, seal the deal. But then earlier in the game, I think he had 2 air balls, didn't he, from up close? I don't know what the hell to make of him, David. It's going to be accusing me all year.
Yeah, he's going to be an up and down prospect for a little while. But again, like we touched on with TJ, I am encouraged that he's playing within the offense, taking shots when he's supposed to. And he wasn't too erratic tonight with the playmaking. He still had the 3 turnovers, but so did a lot of other guys. Booker had 3. TJ had 3 as well. So, those guys that have the ball in their hand are going to rack up those turnovers every now and then. But, I didn't think he was erratic as what we've seen in the preseason. And, we discussed whether you start him to kind of keep him in a role around guys. And even though he didn't start, he did play a majority of his minutes with, at least a couple of those starters on the court, which meant that he, wasn't getting into those ridiculous situations where he felt like he had to do everything on the court, which, probably a product of Igor really shortening that rotation down from what we saw in preseason, Max.
Yep. Let's get into a couple of things we didn't like. We're not going to focus on this much because it's a happy time, but there were a couple of things. I think the primary thing for both of us and probably for all Suns fans is the defense isn't very good, David.
No, it certainly wasn't for game 1, and we got pretty lucky with the shots we were able to hit Every time they kind of came at us, we managed to break their back again with a big three or something like that. But 54 points in the paint for Dallas, Max, is not a good sign, and something that I'm sure Igor harped on after the game. And they attacked Ayton a little bit too. Carlisle's a very, very smart coach, and I thought for periods there where they were trying to make their run, they really designed plays that pegged Ayton's weaknesses, and he kind of got caught ball watching a couple of times. And quite funnily, Powell was probably more effective than DeAndre Jordan was against Ayton. Kind of a little bouncier, a little quicker. DeAndre Jordan kind of looked a little slow out there, I thought.
Yeah, I agree with you. DeAndre Ayton was definitely a little too much for Jordan. If that's the Jordan that Dallas is getting, I don't know how much it's going to help him. But yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you on all of that. We also got pretty lucky on their three-point shooting. They got a little hotter late, but early on in the game they couldn't make a thing, and they were mostly open. And then the other thing, and obviously he's our superstar. I love him. I opened the podcast with him as my favorite thing, but man, oh man, Devin Booker's got to be better on defense. He just does. Like Dallas was going at him, they were posting him up, and they were getting in foul trouble. It was tough for him.
Yeah, it's really interesting talking about the foul trouble and kind of how Igor managed it with Devin versus kind of what happened with Luka early on, because there was a period there, I think it was in the third quarter, where Devin essentially picked up 3 fouls on Wes Matthews in a matter of minutes and had 4 total for the game, and Igor had to sit him for a little while, brought him back at the perfect time around the 6-minute mark, I think, or the 8-minute mark maybe it was, of the last quarter, and kind of the rest happened from there. But yeah, he was pretty bad defensively. Needs to be a little bit more careful in picking up some of those silly fouls, so he can be a little bit more aggressive in certain situations. But got hit by a few picks a couple of times. Don't know how much the hand injury we can really use as an excuse. I think it was just kind of same old Devin Booker on that end, and the nights where he's not hitting those shots is where it's going to stand out a lot more. And the interesting thing for me is, when he was hot and everyone was hot through that kind of last quarter stretch, they didn't really manage to break Dallas's back until the very end. And Dallas kept coming back. There was a JJ Barea 3-point play that kind of kept them in it after a big 3 from Booker. And, we kind of just kept making defensive mistake after defensive mistake. And, that's not going to be good enough in the games where your offense isn't quite clicking as well as what it did tonight, Max.
Yeah, no, it's against a team that's a little better in offense. I think we're going to find that Dallas isn't a very good team. They're at least not as they're presently constituted. As you mentioned, there's a couple of guys out, but I was pretty underwhelmed by Dallas in general. That's kind of tempering my enthusiasm a little bit, because I really want to see what this team looks like against Denver on Saturday. A really good offensive team. It might be tough. But yeah, I'm not going to draw on it too much.
Another quick question for you there, Max. I think we both had Dallas above Phoenix kind of when we were projecting things out, maybe thinking Phoenix were really only going to be above Sacramento in the West. A one-game hot take. Do we think that Phoenix may actually be better than the Dallas Mavericks this year?
It certainly looks like it. We said multiple times now they were missing some guys, so I'm a little nervous in that. I think Luka will get better. Luka had a pretty bad game, but I think it's pretty close. Man, if I had to bet, a bunch of money on it, I think I'd probably barely still take Dallas. But man, what do you think? It's close.
It's really close. I've always loved DeAndre Jordan, but as I said, he looked pretty bad out there tonight against a rookie center. So that wasn't great. Luke is going to have his struggles, but he'll have some big games too. As I said, I think having Dirk and Harrison Barnes in the lineups, the finishing lineups will probably help everyone out a little bit. But a lot closer than I probably thought, to be honest. Even though we're kind of on positive vibes at the moment, coming off a game 1 win. Yep,
I think that's right. I'll go to my next thing I didn't like. I thought Ryan Anderson was just pretty bad overall. He didn't do what he's supposed to, which is shoot. He tried to do some things that he can't really do. He tried to drive and stuff. It was kind of strange. His defense was horrible. I don't know. He was just pretty bad. What do you think?
Yeah, I haven't been all that impressed with him kind of through preseason and now game 1. I'm willing to give him a little bit more time. I think he still plays a role in that starting unit with spacing. But, reputation only takes you so far, and, guys might start sagging off him if he's not hitting shots. So he's going to have to heat up kind of soon for him to, be able to keep that spot in the lineup, I think. The thing that I'm getting the most frustrating with him is just passing up shots. He's kind of dribbling into the key, getting stuck because he doesn't have moves to get around guys, and taking these really bad forced, jump shots, mid-range jump shots that we're kind of used to seeing out of Josh Jackson and guys like that. So that's the frustrating thing. I'd much prefer take the percentages of him, taking, a semi-wide open three-pointer, even if he's, kind of out of one of his zones versus kind of those dribble moves in. But he did a couple of nice things late in games, boxing out and things like that. And whilst he wasn't obviously anywhere near as impressive as Ariza was, there is a reason that those guys are in the starting lineup, and he kind of brings that steadying influence, I think.
Yeah, do what you're paid to do, Ryan. Shoot the damn ball.
Exactly.
But I agree. I mean, at least he's steady, and he had a couple of big offensive rebounds. It wasn't like a complete and total train wreck, and like you said, he'll be hot some of the games, but just a little disappointing. You like to see a little more out of him.
Just put him on notice. I think we're just putting him on notice exactly. A little bit, Max.
This is your first warning, Ryan. What did you think of the point guard play, especially of everybody not named Cannon, who was okay?
Yeah, I mean, you had Cannon on your kind of things you liked list. I thought he was fine. He played 33 minutes, and then Akobo played 7, and then that means given Melton didn't play at all, and Shaq's not on the roster anymore, that means there was 8 minutes in the game where we were basically getting point book, which that's probably about what you want at the moment, maybe a little bit more if it's really working. But as far as a point guard rotation goes, as solid as Cannon was tonight, not something that you really want to hang your hat on as a kind of starting and backup point guard rotation. So that's going to be one to watch. Obviously, Jamal Crawford was in a suit on the bench tonight. How they incorporate him into this rotation and whose minutes he kind of takes is going to be another thing to watch. And that second unit was kind of dicey when Booker was in foul trouble, or they were kind of just looking to get 5 minutes out of their non-starters. It was a pretty ugly lineup there at times, Max.
Yeah, I complained about a particular lineup. I think it was Cannon, Jackson. Who else was in that lineup? I hated
I think
it.
Daniels was in the lineup.
Ryan Anderson, like Tyson Chandler, something like that. Yeah, it's just like, man, that lineup's tough, and the fact they had to go to that was bad. And as against the Jamal Crawford signing as I was, I mean, I think at least it'll help a lineup like that. At least you can create a little bit.
Yeah, I think that was your main kind of criticism of that lineup, is there was virtually no shot creation in the lineup whatsoever, and no defense. It's not like we had a kind of all defense lineup out there and you could kind of take the lack of shot creation. It was kind of our 4 or 5 worst defenders on the floor at the same time. So that was an interesting one, definitely one to watch. Maybe it was just a product of Devin Booker's kind of foul trouble a little bit there, so Igor had to go away from his kind of usual rotation a little bit. But yeah, it's very obvious that our best lineup right now is with point Book, and that's what they finished with to close out the game. There was a quote from Igor around that. Whilst he's not going to start Booker there, he's certainly comfortable playing him there at the end of games, and going to be one to watch. I think we're still on point guard watch here for a while, Max, because particularly if this team starts off well and shows a bit of fight, if that's the position where they're really lacking and can make a jump, then that's the one we're going to need to watch for a trade, I think.
Yep, I definitely agree. That's going to be something to watch all season. Last thing I want to get into on my didn't likes, and then you can throw one more out if you want to. And it isn't really that I didn't like it from a perspective I thought it was the wrong thing to do or whatever, but it's just kind of disappointing to see Mikal Bridges not play at all. I don't know if it's because he's rusty because of his, he was hurt for a little while there, or just out of the rotation, or what's going on, but that was disappointing. And then also, Melton wasn't even active, and I loved Anthony Melton, and the fact that he wasn't even active is kind of discouraging. I mean, I don't know if he's just not showing it in practice or whatever, but I'd like to see him get a little bit of a chance.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to give it maybe 10 to 15 games here before we make any kind of too harsh judgments on who's playing and who's not playing. But yeah, interesting observation. I hope that the Bridges one is more to do with his injury and getting him back into form before he can take up some of those minutes. I mean, Jackson played 28 tonight, Warren played 23. As we've said a couple of times, Kanan played 33. Ariza played 37. You know, you don't want Trevor Ariza playing 37 minutes a night for the whole 82-game season. Yeah. So I think there's going to be some opportunities there for those guys to get in. It's just going to kind of have to shake out a little bit before they can work it out. But yeah, I don't think you make a trade like they did for Mikal Bridges and then he's kind of stuck to the end of the bench. Melton might be a different one. It'll be interesting to see what happens with him. But yeah, I'd expect to see Bridges in the lineup. He's too good and brings too much in the way of both defense and shooting, which, as we said, the second unit definitely seemed to lack there. And as we also said, there's going to be some nights there where TJ and Josh aren't going, 6 from 8 from 3, and they're not going to get the minutes that they got tonight. So, yeah, I'm not panicking too much on that one, Max.
Nope, I'm not really panicking about it. I just like to see some progression from those two guys as the season goes forward. David, anything else from you?
I'm going to throw in one that's got nothing to do with the game and it's got more to do with roster construction. By the time people are listening to this, I would assume that Shaq Harrison is definitely already a free agent and Devon Reed is very close to clearing waivers. So unless the relationships are that bad with both of them, I'm going to not like if the Suns just leave their second two-way slot open instead of picking one of those guys up and putting him with the Naz Suns. It just seems like a no-brainer to me. They were both very hard cuts. I understand both of them. But when you've got the option of bringing one of them back there, I'd like to see us bring one of them back for that second slot. What do you think, Max? If you had to choose between one of them that's more likely, what would you go with?
I think probably Shaq. Actually, I'd say probably it's more likely Davon Reed, because I think it's more likely a team will pick up Shaq Harrison. But if they're both available for whatever reason, I think they'll bring Shaq Harrison just because obviously the point guard situation is so dreadful.
Yeah, I'll go Reed. Maybe it'd be harder to convince Shaq to come back because of why he kind of got forced out in the first place with the point guard situation. So maybe they can get Reed back. Reed had a cryptic time signature tweet after he was cut, so not sure what that meant, but we'll probably find out before we record again next, Max.
Yeah, we'll see. It might have just been like a my time is coming thing, but reading into athlete tweets when they're emojis is always difficult. All right, well, that was fun, David. Thanks for joining for that. Everyone, please rate, review, subscribe. You can follow me at MaxMCC11. You can follow David at The 4 Point Play. Follow our podcast at 7SOL Pod. David, we're going to come back again this week is the plan. We're going to try to record on Sunday, talk about what's going on in the rest of the league, talk about the Suns against the Nuggets, and previewing against the Warriors. That'll be good.
Yeah, regular programming. We're just excited to get this special one out after game one, and we might try and do this after big news and big games as much as possible, but yeah, back to our kind of weekly schedule and another pod in just a couple of days, Max.
Can't wait. Thanks, guys.